discussion. Before you, there is a folder, very important. I don't know whether you have looked at what is there, because most of the times we take document home and we put it somewhere where we hope we shall remember in good time. And unfortunately, we don't remember in good time. And sometimes we are told, if you want to give information for people to read, to hide it in a book. So this one we are not hiding. Allow me, Chief Guest, to mention. Please open your folder. Within your folder, we have the Act itself, in brief. We have the Act. We have the legal notice establishing the rules, 2020, so that after this we can interact with the documents. But important to go with the challenge that was given by our actors, the girls who are here this morning. We have their discussion was meaningful engagement. So we have a policy brief to take us through meaningful engagement, and then we have a policy brief on accountability, which is an issue that has come up through. I thought this was important for us to interact with this. And finally, to answer some of the questions they asked here, is the frequently asked questions, a short one that we can interact with. Thank you very much, MC.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ireri and Honorable Wanjala. At this point, before I hand over the protocol to the Principal Secretary, I wish to recognize the presence of Honorable Florence Bore, the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Labor and Social Protection. Apologies. I also wish to recognize the presence of Mr. Stephen Kibet from the Office of the Attorney General and Mr. Johnston Kuya, the Senior Policy Advisor for Strategic Partnership from the Embassy of the Kingdom of Netherlands. Feel most welcome. At this point, I hand over the protocol to the Principal Secretary. Most welcome.
Thank you very much. A round of applause. I think, Honorable Wanjala, you have left us with more questions than answers, and that really shows that we need to have a very close partnership with the judiciary. You've raised very important questions in terms of what is a domestic relationship. And I sat there thinking, between me and my house help, do we have a domestic relationship? So definitely there is need for us to expound that. You've also raised very important issues, Honorable Wanjala, in terms of definition and defining the enforcement officers. And I think this would be an important point to maybe lobby and advocate for the fact that from where we sit as a State Department, it is really important to us that our 65 gender officers really need to be gazetted as court users, because they cannot carry out their work absent that recognition. I have also had the pleasure of watching the play from She Leads and also your presentation. Sometimes we say that ilikuwa na kizungu mingi. So I agree with you when you say we really need to disseminate, and we'll be engaging our partners here. I've whispered to Terry Holmes, and I know Finland and Netherlands. We need to partner together with the judiciary to have very simplified versions, dissemination in all sorts of media, so that Kenyans at large can engage. But even as we move towards our final set of the program, it's important for us to know that this is not where we should be. It's a sad place to be. When we watch this play, it is really what is in our lives. When we hear about what we need to go to do when we go to the police station, it is not where we need to be in the first place. So we really do need to know that even before we get to this point, prevention is what is key. It is now my honor to move us to the next set of the program. And also, I would like to acknowledge the presence of Honorable Florence Bore. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's now my pleasure to invite our friend, our women rep here in Nairobi, our strong partner in GAF, our support system in very many ways, the Honorable Esther Passaris, to come and give us our address. Could you please welcome her with an applause? Thank you.
Next, all our partners, all the CSOs that are here, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Okay, so first of all, I want to commend the CS and all the partners for getting us to this place that we are today. We know that domestic violence is really on the rise, and we saw its ugly face during the pandemic. We also cannot just talk domestic violence, we have to look at gender-based violence as a whole. And when I talk gender-based violence, I'm talking about the teenage pregnancies, which when we met His Excellency the President, he told us we need to address teenage pregnancies. And of course, there is no way to address teenage pregnancies if we deny our children comprehensive sex education. When we talk about gender-based violence, we also talk about rape, and we talk about sodomy, and we talk about all other crimes that are related to sexual gender-based violence. As Nairobi Women Rep, when I became the Member of Parliament, it came to my realization that we don't have. We talk about the gender desk in the police, and the police, we have to commend them. They have come up with police units where you can go and file your report in privacy, but there was not enough facilities in our station. So one of the first things that we did as Nairobi is to get a project going for 17 police stations to have GBV units, SGBV units, and we have actually ready to commission 9 of them. We also decided to put up a safe space, a safe house. Now, the safe house had a lot of challenges. We kept saving our money because we knew it would be something that we have to put in the capital city that would be a model for the entire country as well as the continent as a whole, because sexual gender-based violence is not just unique to one county or one country. And now we're looking globally with the vision that our president has, not just for Kenya, but for the continent as a whole. So I'm happy to report that we have partnered with Nairobi County. Under the leadership of Anne Kananu, when she was governor, we were able to secure a parcel of land. And in that parcel of land, we're putting up Nairobi's first government-run GBV safe space. And we're going to be very proud to launch that hopefully in the next 6 months or so. But when we look at gender-based violence, I mean, the rules, the regulations, all this is important, the budgets, the hospitals, but what's important, more important, is the training. I want to give you an example of what happened in India. In India, they were having rape, and it was really becoming very, very difficult for people who were raped, the women who were raped, to be to actually get justice. And what happened is they took an NGO going out there and saying, you know what, it's time we got women trained as lawyers and trained to help these women who come out and say that they've been raped. And the program actually brought in a lot of women who were survivors, who went through law school, and they came back and be able to actually help give justice to the people of GBV. So when we have the laws, we also have to sensitize. I mean, the skit here today showed a policewoman that was a bit insensitive, you know. It was a bit comical. That person who's coming is so aggrieved, is broken, you know, telling her, go cry and then come back. You know, we might laugh about it, it might be a skit, but some of these skits actually give us a message. I think it's important for us to get the data. I was recently in Murang'a County. CS, we went to Murang'a County. He says it was developed in-house, but seriously, what he has put together is something worth replicating on our GBV space. Now, while I have this platform, I'm a bit disheartened this morning when I woke up to a clip by Muhammad Ali, a fellow member of Parliament for Nyali. Now, in that clip, he calls for the killing of LGBTQI people Of course, we have a way of referring to them in Mombasa, which is, the Shoga community, and we are saying that they should be killed. Now, I want to stand here and say something. Our penal code and our constitution does not call for the killing of any LGBTQI persons. Our judiciary has been very bold to uphold the human rights of the LGBTQI community, but by allowing them to be registered, so they're following the law. So they should not be criticized for doing what they're doing. They're an arm of government and they've done right by the LGBTQI community. I'm a Catholic, and our Pope says, it may be a sin, but it's not criminal. So I want us to remember that God is love. And as we are calling for harm to the LGBTQI community, we remember the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments says, thou shalt not kill. And the only person who can judge humans is God. That moral judgment. So as I stand here, I'm very proud that we are making progress in terms of domestic violence. I'm very proud of the stages and the steps that we're taking as a country, but I'm also saddened that a member of parliament can stand up on a podium and ask citizens to kill members of the LGBTQI. I hope that the police have watched that clip, because this is definitely not allowed. It's not allowed in Kenya for you to go and kill anyone. All right? It's not allowed. It's against our laws. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Passaris. It's now my pleasure to invite Ms. Rose Washuka to come and speak on behalf of the Chief Justice. Ms. Washuka works as a Chief of Staff for the Chief Justice. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much, PS. Madam Cabinet Secretaries, Honorable Esther Passaris, distinguished partners, guests, good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
I think that this conversation today, and before I delve into my speech, please accept greetings from the Honorable Chief Justice and the entire judiciary, and commitment that the judiciary is keen and continues to collaborate with the ministry and with the executive and parliament to make sure that everybody in our society remains safe, and that the agenda that we have for a country that is safe and secure for everybody is realized. So please accept greetings and that message of commitment to partnering. As I was saying, that today's gathering is an indication that there is still work to be done. And I join Honorable Passaris in congratulating government, the ministry, and for their continued commitment to ensuring that gender-based violence becomes an issue that is actively resolved in our country. Gone are the days when it was a silent pandemic. Gone are the days when domestic abuse was part of usual chastisement in homes. And I think that we've all confronted the problematic aspects of our cultures as far as gender-based violence is concerned. But we've also realized that gender-based violence is actually now happening across genders and across the spectrum of identity, including in our LGBTQI community. The judiciary is implementing a vision of social transformation through access to justice. And social transformation through access to justice is an enlivement of the social transformation promise of the Constitution. And what this means is that the judiciary is interpreting access to justice not just as adjudicative access to justice, but as a component, a core component of our social structure. That when we think about access to justice, we are thinking about individual responsibility to ensure that we live justice as we interact with each other, but also that we are empowered to protect and claim justice. So there is an element of agency. And then we steal and consider persons who do not have agency to either assert or claim justice. And so the judiciary, under the social transformation through access to justice vision, under the leadership of the Chief Justice, is looking at the judiciary in a dual spectrum. The first is as an adjudicative arm of government, meaning that when conflicts come to the judiciary, they are resolved expeditiously and in a manner that empowers and dignifies society. The second one is as a connector, the judiciary as a connector, that the judiciary then reaches out and adopts a people-facing strategy to make sure that we can enhance people-centered justice. And to enhance people-centered justice, we are focusing on 5 investments. The first investment is evidence-based decision-making. That when we think about any policy and any aspect in the judiciary, we are asking ourselves, what does the evidence say? What does the data say? And that is why we invest heavily in data. And that data is available at the click of a button. So that I can tell you today how many cases of GBV I filed in the country, but I can also tell you what are the 11 hotspots by case statistics. And in those 11 hotspots, the Chief Justice has established specialized SGBV courts and SGBV strategies. And I'm adding S because GBV often hand in hand goes with also sexual violence. Nairobi, Kisumu, Siaya, Meru, Nakuru, Machakos, Mombasa, Kisii, Trans Nzoia, Kakamega, and Kiambu. When we received these statistics, we ask ourselves, we know the situation in Kilifi. So why is Kilifi not in these core counties? And the reason is access to the courts. These cases are simply not getting reported. And why is the case? Why is that the case? Where is the problem? Is the problem in our communities, in our families? Are the cases getting lost at the police stations? Are they getting lost along the justice continuum? When you think about the judiciary is an upstream or a downstream actor in the justice chain. Upstream, you have the points where criminal cases come through. And the Chief Justice gives this analogy of a fisherman, that if a fisherman waits downstream, they risk catching the fish dead if the upstream waters are polluted. And so what are we doing to make sure that the upstream waters remain as clean as they ought to be, so that when the fish comes downstream, we are able to address those issues? So focus is on people-centered justice. But more importantly, the second investment that we are making is to ensure that we have deepened partnerships. And I know under the leadership of Waziri, the judiciary and the ministry are now working very closely together to make sure that we are working very collaboratively. And within the aegis of the National Council on Administration of Justice, NCAJ, even more so, because coordination remains problematic. And where there is lack of coordination, the policies are duplicated, efforts are duplicated, and really we lose the baby with the bathwater. And that is not what we want to do. So Waziri, thank you for always challenging us to make sure that we are coordinating our efforts and we are not duplicating them. The third investment is actually financing interventions. Because we need to know that the data is telling us there is a problem in Nairobi. And we know that we need to work with the honorable members of parliament. We know we need to work with the ministry. And then we have to understand exactly how much do we need to resolve these problems. It is well and good to want heavy budgets, but do we know where these budgets are being channeled? There's a concept of doing a lot with a little. And because of our hard economic times, we continue to emphasize that we need to invest resources to the greatest problems. But the resources that are available also can go a long way. The fourth investment that we are making is the investment of data. Evidence and data are different things, but they are connected. And I know that in 2020, the ministry enforced GBV statistics into the performance management strategies. And that is a phenomenal thing, because then we are able to track and we are able to have the data where it is. We know globally that in 2014, 41% of women experienced GBV, physical or sexual in nature. Between 2014 and the critical period of 2020, I am sure that number has gone up to 61%. But do we know what that number is? Do we know where these cases are? Do we know where we're investing? Do we know where we need to have the conversations? And finally, the other investment that we need to make is actually on community engagement. How are we engaging communities? As a judiciary, we have lifted the veil and looked to the Constitution for guidance, because the Constitution actually directs us under Article 1, where sovereignty comes from, that our role and our duty is to the people. And so we remain intent on understanding where the needs of the people are, and then responding to those justice needs. Currently, we know that only 10% of cases come to the judiciary. We also know that in 2020, criminal cases were higher than civil cases. We also know that about 68% cases go to the police and the administration elements of government. What kind of investments under Article 48 are we making to make sure that our police force is ready to address the conflicts in society, to address the problems that are being presented by the people? Also, how far down are we going to make sure that we have community paralegals who are trained and empowered to represent the needs of our people? I'm an advocate of the High Court, but lawyers really cannot penetrate the community. So how are we empowering community paralegals? How are we empowering CBOs? How are we empowering civil society? And we're ready. We're ready to collaborate on all these efforts, because at the end of the day, our rallying call is to ensure that the vision in the Constitution of social transformation is realized. Thank you, Waziri, for this event and for this launch, and again, to reaffirm that the fight is far from over, and it is our individual responsibility. I have been a victim of GBV. We have all been victims of GBV. We have witnessed GBV in our homes, in our communities, and so the problem is not far-fetched. It's not about them. It's about us. And it's about the most critical component of our lives. It's about human dignity. Thank you very much.
Let's really give another round of applause. Thank you so much, Washuka, on those reflections. Indeed, they are touching us at a very core point. You did mention that we have the hotspot counties, and we were just whispering, and you did mention like Kilifi is not there in the list of the hotspot counties. When you look at Kilifi, Washuka, this is for you, sorry. When you look at Kilifi, we have the girl child issues, and we saw what came up here. I think it's important that we really address that. When we look at Makueni, for instance, it's not there, but we all know that there are such cases of incest as very critical, SGBV, and out-of-court settlements, which are really hampering our fight against this. I also take note that you've talked about the indicators. We are happy that the Kenya Demographic Health Survey put in the gender indicators in the last report, and that really helped us work with the data that you are saying is very critical for designing interventions. I also note your comment on gender statistics being on our PCs, but unfortunately that was dropped, and it's something we are all trying to get back onto it, and I think there's already a conversation that is going on around that. It's also important for us to congratulate the judiciary for a step that you took the other day of launching the electronic register for sexual offenders, because that is really a bold move and in line with the fight that we are having here. So I do know the Cabinet Secretary has really been pushing for us as a country to have a national conversation. There is need for a national conversation on FGM, which we know is the season is just around the corner, on GBV, on SGBV. We really do need to engage at a national level and have that conversation. So to keep the conversation going, it's now my honor to invite the Honorable Cabinet Secretary, Madam Florence Bore, to make her remarks. Honorable Florence Bore is in charge of social protection, which encompasses children, it encompasses teenagers, and we do know that this conversation cannot separate who are the ones who bear the brunt of gender-based violence, of domestic violence. More often than not, it's the children, it's the teenagers in the house, it's older members of the society. So karibu sana waziri, please let's welcome her. Those who are not clapping, particularly that table, what is the problem?
I guess people woke up too early and maybe they've not had tea and it's very cold. Honorable Aisha Jumwa, the Cabinet Secretary for Public Service, Gender and Affirmative Action. The PS, Ms. Veronica Nduva, State Department for Gender and Affirmative Action. Ms. Rose Wasuka, the Chief of Staff, Office of the Chief Justice. Say hello to her. I work a lot with her at the Labor and Environment Court. Honorable Esther Passaris, the Woman Representative, Nairobi County. Honorable Anjala, as is living. Thank you for your presentation. Magdalene Mwoki, the Country Director, Ferris D. Homes. I'm happy to be here this morning to join my sister. I'm delighted that I'm able to join my sister and colleague, Honorable Aisha Jumwa, the Cabinet Secretary for Public Service, Gender and Affirmative Action, and the esteemed partners in the gender sector in this important event to launch the Protection Against Domestic Violence rules. These rules will indeed go a long way in strengthening the current mechanisms for the protection of victims of domestic violence. Domestic violence, as the other presenters have talked about, poses detrimental effects to the victims. It not only impacts negatively on their physical health, but also on the mental health, and may lead to self-harm, isolation, depression, suicidal attempts, and domestic violence meted on children, which is greatly under my docket, the children, causes detrimental effects, especially on their wholesome development. The Violence Against Children report of 2019 revealed that nearly half of the females aged between 18 to 24 years and more than half of the males experience childhood violence. And among them, 15.6% of the females also experience childhood violence. That tells us nearly 2/3 experience multiple violence, such as sexual, beating, and a lot of it. As has been said, the COVID-19 pandemic period served to aggravate the domestic violence because the lockdowns and other mobility restrictions left many gender-based violence victims trapped in their homes with abusers, and they were isolated from social contact and support networks. It is no doubt that we are now dealing with the aftermath. The protection against domestic violence rules comes in handy to be able to enhance access to justice and be able to promote the human rights for victims of domestic violence. We all agree that to realize these goals of these rules, it requires a multi-sectoral and integrated approach. I call upon all the stakeholders present here to be able to harness all the efforts and support the Ministry of Public Service and Gender Affairs towards the path to a Kenya that is free from domestic violence and where reproductive rights are respected. I also want to mention that as the Ministry of Labor, we have the Convention 190, which is harassment and violence in the place of work. The President has given us directions to be able to ratify this Convention C-190. We are yet to start the ratification as a country, but we've been able to table that convention before the Labor Board, which was put in office just the other day. Analysis will be done, and I want to promise that we should be able to do it in this new financial year. As I conclude, I want to commit to ensure the implementation of the protection against domestic violence rules, activities that fall under the mandate of the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, particularly the ones that are related to children matters and issues of harassment at the place of work. I thank you all, and God bless you.
Thank you so much, Waziri. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll all agree with me, we cannot separate social protection, gender issues, judiciary. We are all parts of one whole, and we continue to work together. It's great to hear there's a bit of traction and movement on the ratification of C-190. We definitely look forward to that. And after the C-190, then another conversation on C-189. And we'll continue working together. Thank you so much for those remarks. Now, I do know that this is, we are getting to the end. This is a moment we've been waiting for. As I invite the Cabinet Secretary, I'm a bit worried because this is a subject that's very close to her heart. And I can see she's been updating her speech. So I suspect she might have like 3 sets of speeches. Every speaker who came up prompted her to add a little bit more to her speech. So I was just whispering to her, can you number all your pages in order? But yes, our Cabinet Secretary is definitely very passionate about the subject of protection of women. And we are really honored to have her championing that cause, because this is a matter that she truly believes in and that she is really passionate about. So even as she addresses the issues, she addresses them not only from the mind but from the heart. So as we welcome her, I ask that we pay attention to her remarks. It's now my pleasure and would ask in respect of the chief guest, we be upstanding to welcome the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Public Service, Gender and Affirmative Action, Honorable Aisha Katanajum. Karibu Waziri.
Thank you, Madam PS, and let us all be seated. The Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Labor, my sister and colleague, Honorable Florence Bore, representative of Honorable Lady Justice Martha Koome, Chief Justice and President of the Supreme Court of Kenya, my very own PS, State Department for Gender, Madam Veronica Anduva. She leads Program Representative, Magdalene Mwoki, Country Director Terry D. Holmes, Development Partners present, Government Ministries and Departments Representatives, members of the civil society and media fraternity, Honorable Wanjala, Magistrate and the Secretary Rules Committee, Honorable Esther Passaris, my colleague, or rather former colleague, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Today marks a significant milestone in our collaborative effort to combat domestic violence in Kenya. I stand before you as the Cabinet Secretary for Public Service, Gender and Affirmative Action, filled with pride and a deep sense of responsibility as we launch the Protection Against Domestic Violence rules. Domestic violence is a grave issue that affects individuals, families, and communities across our nation. It knows no boundaries of age, gender, socioeconomic status, or ethnicity. It leaves scars that are not always visible, tearing apart the fabric of our society and undermining the very essence of human dignity. Indeed, statistics from the Kenya Demographic and Health Survey of 2022 indicate that over 40% of women have experienced physical or sexual intimate partner violence in their lifetime. Moreover, the survey demonstrates that 43% of women and 35% of men believe that a man is justified to beat his wife. Among the rural population, 51% of women and 40% of men agreed that wife beating is justified. These are the worrying trends with us today. And the worst prison you can ever be in is the prison of mind. So we are meant to believe that this is what is supposed to happen. And as a survivor of gender-based violence, it's something that I do not want to narrate every time. Because if you want a wound to heal, you have to stop scratching it. And I hate to narrate my story, but I'm trying to imagine that if we had the law in place, and from my village in Takaungu, no one knew that I had a right when my rights were violated, that I had a right to report. Now the question that always crossed my mind, how many of Aisha Juma in the village who are there today looking at us, and from what our magistrate, Wanjala, has said, he has posed a question to us in this room, as the players, as the ambassadors, that how many are we here knows that these rules were gazetted in 2020, and the silence was very loud. Very, very loud. So you can imagine the 50 million Kenyans out there looking at us, and we could not answer that question, meaning there's a serious gap that needs to be filled. So if you're called a player, know that the team outside there is really watching and depending on you. So, recognizing the urgency and seriousness of this matter, the government of Kenya has taken decisive steps to address domestic violence comprehensively. These rules we are launching here today are a testament to our commitment to protecting the rights and well-being of every Kenyan, irrespective of their circumstances. The protection against domestic violence rules are designed to provide a robust legal framework that strengthens the support and protection mechanisms available to survivors of domestic violence. These rules emphasize prevention, intervention, and holistic support, reflecting a multi-sectorial approach that involves collaboration between government agencies, civil society organizations, and the community at large. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to highlight some key aspects of these rules. Firstly, the rules establish clear guidelines for obtaining protection orders, ensuring that survivors have access to swift and effective legal remedies. These orders will prohibit the perpetrator from further acts of violence, safeguarding the safety and security of the survivor and any children involved. Secondly, the rules emphasize the importance of prevention and early intervention. They underline the need and responsibility by legal duty bearers to handle survivors with compassion, while also ensuring the perpetrators are held accountable for their actions. Lastly, these rules underscore the importance of public awareness and community engagement. We must challenge the social norms and attitudes that perpetuate domestic violence even as the rule of law takes effect. Through targeted awareness campaigns, education initiatives, and community dialogue, we aim to foster a society that embraces equality, respect, and nonviolence. Ladies and gentlemen, the launch of the Protection Against Domestic Violence rule is just the beginning. Implementing these rules effectively requires the collective effort of all stakeholders, government, development partners, civil society, community leaders, and every Kenyan citizen. We must work together to create a society that rejects violence in all its forms and stand up for the rights and dignity of every individual. I urge each and every one of you to familiarize yourselves with these rules. Support survivors in their journey to healing and justice, and join us in advocating for a society free from domestic violence. Together, let's build a nation where every home is a sanctuary of love, respect, and peace. As I conclude, I wish to appreciate the accountability requirement for our courts to dispense swiftly and effective cases of gender-based violence. I commend our Chief Justice and President of the Supreme Court, who is well represented here today, for recently launching the first ever special court for handling sexual violence cases at Shanzu Law Court in Mombasa. The judiciary commitment to raise the bar on judiciary accountability for gender-based violence cases will serve to help preserve the dignity of survivors and enhance fair trial within the tenets of the Constitution. I am aware that all other government institutions in the gender-based violence referral pathways are putting in place significant reforms to ensure justice for survivors of domestic violence and GBV. We recognize the key role of the Rules Committee of the Judiciary and Gender and Media Initiative for the consistent support in the development of these rules among other stakeholders, and she leads Kenya for facilitating this launch. We appreciate the individual and institutional commitment to end gender-based violence. And I want, before I conclude my speech, I want to say that our work is far from over, and we must fill the gap. I want to echo the sentiments of the speakers who took the stage before me, and the requests that have been made. And I want to say that the beginning of justice to our survivors is at the police. And it is very sad that today a survivor is required to pay between 1,000 and 3,000 Kenya shillings to acquire a P3 form. It is very sad, and I want to say that because by requiring as a P3 form, as I have said, is the beginning, or it is the starting of the journey to justice to these survivors. So if they are asked to pay 1,000 to 3,000, depending on the police station where these survivors will report, is actually to re-victimize that person who is already victimized. And therefore, I would request that this service be rendered free of charge. There was an ask, or rather a request, to establish funded and operational gender-based violence police unit to complement the GBV codes and create a more supportive and inclusive environment for survivors by our girls and young women from She Leads. I want to say that the President of the Republic of Kenya recommitted on the 12th commitment of gender-based violence on the platform of GEF. And we already have 2 police units, a scientific name, a polycare unit, that are already on operational. We have one here in Nairobi, and the second one in Laikipia. And I want to commit here today to engage with my counterpart, the CS Interior, Honorable Kindiki, on full activation of the Polycare program in this country. Let me also say that I'm sorry. Let me say that on the survivor fund, it is one of the 12 commitments, as I've said, on the platform of GEF platform, and the government, through the State Department for Gender, I can say that we have started to actualize, and our target is by 2026 to have the funds by the government through the State Department for Gender. But as we are talking here, as we are continuing to engage here today, is that we already have the fund, which is in existence, but it's a bit. I think it's a private fund called Jasiri. Sorry, Jasiri fund, not Jami. Jami is for labor. You know what Jami? It's called Jasiri fund. In conclusion, and the key message here today is that the government of Kenya, under the leadership of His Excellency William Samoei Ruto, has zero tolerance to GBV. So, today, I want to declare total war on GBV. And as the Cabinet Secretary, Public Service, Gender and Affirmative Action, I am on the forefront. Na munanijua? Munanifahamu? Vile Tundu amesema, or rather my peers, hii kitu mimi mwenyewe imenisumbua, but nimeheal. Lakini nataka kuona Wakenya wakiwa huru and the society ikiwa huru, free from GBV. And with those few many remarks, naona kuna mambo hapa wanajipanga panga. Where? Here.
So, Waziri, thank you so much. A round of applause for Waziri. Yeah, Waziri. I'm going to request the High Table to join the Cabinet Secretary at the official launch and ribbon cutting.
Oh, I'm here. It is now my pleasure to officially launch.
So the CS is approaching there. Are we set? Members of the press, are you comfortable, or you want people to create some room? Some room, okay. So, Ireri, please, the team there, please create room for the media to see the Cabinet Secretary.
Hello, please, some space. We are going to do a countdown, 1 to 5, and then our chief guest.
So, Cabinet Secretary,
I wish to
Mr. Ireri. She can hear me. Yeah. Cabinet Secretary, please approach the purple and then make your remark there.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. It is now my pleasure to officially launch.
Waziri, we count a countdown from 5. When we get to 1, you can cut the ribbon. So, ladies and gentlemen, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
We are going, thank you. We have some examines for the BADB rules to be demonstrated. We have the Cabinet Secretary as our guest who is here. Thank you. Where are the girls?